yeah, that gave sufficient time for Marcel to join us again. As you know, the COVID pandemic has had tremendous influence, and it still has everywhere in the world. And as a consequence, the demand for the UK universal credit benefits exploded in the UK. Digidentity was able to scale its services on the Gov.uk Verify within a matter of weeks to the levels that were needed to cope with that demand. And we have with us here Marcel Wendt, Managing Director of Digidentity. Marcel, great that you could come here as well, moving from one webinar to another this afternoon,
yes,
I think.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Your main office is in the Netherlands, but you're not close by, are you? You're abroad
I'm
now?
abroad, yeah. But normally our head office is in the Netherlands.
To start with, Marcel, how did Digidentity become such an important partner in the Gov.uk Verify program?
I think it was tender already 6-7 years ago. So we wrote on this tender for Gov.uk Verify, and we were one of the parties that was allowed to deliver these services. At that time, there were 3 parties giving access to the framework. So you can compare it with the Dutch e-erkenning framework. It's an open framework. Everybody can join if you can prove that you're compliant with the standards. So we did that. Afterwards, in the second round, more identity providers had joined. So we were at the max at 6 identity providers. And now we are back to 1. 2 labels, Post Office and Digidentity, but we deliver the Post Office service completely white label. So it's now depending on 1 technology. Looks nice on a business perspective, but it gives also a lot of questions in the market that you have a monopoly in the UK market. But the framework is open, and identity providers are able to join.
Yeah. So, but actually, the number of providers dropped down from 6 to 2 in the last few months.
Yes, and that's because it's a very difficult. So they have extra regulations on top of, if you compare it with the IDIS, they have more rules on top of it, because in the UK they don't trust their own passport. So you need to deliver 3 identity documents: the passport, a driving license, and something from your bank or your mobile operator. We need to check PEPs and sanctions list. We need to check activity history. So it's way more complicated than how we do it, for example, for the Dutch government. And that's why we managed to do it good. We had 70% market share. So the other 30% has to divide it by 4 identity providers. And yeah, their market share was too small, so they dropped off.
Okay, well, you talk about market share. What kind of volume? It was all already mentioned also in the news that volumes were growing quite rapidly. What kind of volumes are there in the Gov.uk services? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, so in a normal day we do 8,000 onboardings a day. Before COVID, before NFC, it was a third via the mobile. So 60% was manual entry. So type in manual your passport, driving license, etc. 30% we did via our mobile app, but then with the photo, take a picture of the identity document and the selfie. With NFC, we now switch to 50% on mobile. So 50% of the registrations go directly via NFC on the mobile. So that's a big increase. We've automated in the meantime, during the COVID peak, not only NFC, but also artificial intelligence for the selfie checking and liveness detection method. So 80% is going automatically now. But on the COVID peak itself, we had not 8,000 a day, but we had, the max was 120,000 in one day.
120,000 in one day.
So
that's substantial volume.
That was really substantial volume. So I'm glad we were running in AWS. So we need to scale up our services very rapidly overnight, and we managed to do that. So we need to put the throttling mechanism in front of it during the peak, but yeah, we managed to stay alive in this big peak.
Yeah, incredible numbers. So technology was key in scaling at that pace on such short notice. Did that also what did it also mean for Digidentity? Did other parts have to grow as well, or was it kind of how difficult was it, not on the technological part but also on the company side to handle this kind of volumes?
Yeah, we saw that when we were removing the throttling before our front door because we scaled up our own platform. So we saw that our other service providers on the back end were struggling because we're blowing them out of the air because the volumes were so high. So it was really a day-to-day during the night, were long days, and to manage that with all the parties. But we succeeded, and we're very proud of it. But we had to scale up the manual selfie check as well because we did partially a manual selfie check, and normally we do that with around 6 people, and at the peak we had 100 people doing that. So we need to train them online. So that was a challenge as well because we can't get them in our office to do a training because that was not allowed. So we rapidly created onboarding training manuals and assessments for the people before they can do their job. And so it was nice to see how creative your employees becoming in such stress period.
Yeah. So it's really it dissipates really through the chain, also of your partners, and it also dissipates to the manual part as well, which must have been quite challenging indeed. You have manual part at your office earlier on. Well, the volume or the percentage of the app grew substantially, but also there's still a part that's been done manually. Is that at the municipality, or where does that take place? Where do the people have to go then?
No, there is everything can be done online. But in the UK, we're working then with an old method, knowledge-based verification. So first we try to identify you, who you are. Then we buy, in the back end, we buy data, and we're asking you a lot of questions. So what was your mortgage at June 2016? That kind of awful questions. And that's how we do the verification bit. So instead of looking at pictures, if you're the same person as your ID, you get a lot of questions, and there's a very complicated scoring mechanism in it. If you're on the political exposed person list, then the questions will be harder. So there's a complete dynamic in this situation, but 50% is still going via this route.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's rather limited trust in the passport as a foundation for identification here. So how does that compare to the story that Caleb told, and how they proceed? What's the nature of that difference? Can you say something about it?
Yeah, that's how in the past the passports were delivered to the persons. They put them in an envelope and sent them to their home address. So that's it's a real passport, so you can trust the passport, but you don't not sure if that person has that passport. And but NFC brings a complete differentiator in this, because normally we need to trust 3 identity documents. If we are able to read the chip, we can trust completely on 1 document, of course, with the liveness detection and selfie comparison. Plus, on top of that, we need a proof that you are really living in the UK. So we need to check a name address match somewhere in some kind of database. Yeah. That sometimes is challenging because we see a lot of foreign people subscribing. They all have passports or ID cards. But then, yeah, if they're just in the UK, you can't find them in a database. So that's the challenging part. So not everybody is getting a digital identity, is able to reach that state. And that's still a trouble. But the good thing is we see with NFC, on a manual check, we did around 150 different countries. So foreign people living in the UK. So it's not only UK and Irish passports. The number 2, I think, is a Polish passport, and then you see the Baltic states, Romania, Hungary. That kind of countries are the big deliverers of identities, what we check for the UK government. And there we see sometimes challenges with identity cards in Poland, for example, because the photograph in the chip is a little bit different encrypted than at other passports. So we see a lot of challenges, and that's what we, between ReadID and our technology team, is working very great together to solve these as quick as possible.
Yeah, standards only go that far. I mean, standards never solve all the issues. Well, we mentioned EIDAS and the thinking on the European scale on this type of services. What is Digidentity? How is the Digidentity approaching Europe in a broader sense? We now focused a bit on the UK. Well, you're a part of the erkenning framework in the Netherlands. What does Europe look to you?
Yeah, so we are notified now via 2 schemes. So GovUK Verify is notified in EIDAS, so our identity is notified there. erkenning is notified in EIDAS, so it's delivered there as well. So I think the financial industry needs to be learned that if you have a notified identity on substantial level, you comply with the 5th AMLD. So a lot of compliance checks are already done. But what we still see is that banks want to see also a paper document where they can see a copy of the passport and that it is checked. And while that's not necessary. So the problem, if you read the chip of the ID, you don't have a copy of that passport. So you need to, again, do old-fashioned work on top of it to give the trust to the financial market. But yeah, I think not only Europe is growing, but we are starting in Australia as well. And we will currently be setting up a pilot between Singapore, the Netherlands, UK, and the Canadian market based on the EIDAS trust levels. So also countries outside Europe are going to rely on the EIDAS.
Okay, so EIDAS is really spreading its wings throughout the world now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of the good things that Europe has done with the EIDAS.
Yeah. So we have GDPR as a main marketing vehicle, but also EIDAS. So something good is once in a while going on a European level, which can be noted in the UK, of course. Some questions from the audience. On the EID services in the Netherlands, Marcel, some of them are partially, or they're partially owned also, or partially government owned. Do you foresee a role for private sector identity verification providers in the Netherlands?
Yeah, absolutely. My company has built Digidentity, so the government identity scheme that will be notified now as well, what we just heard from Bob. But erkenning is now heading into the citizen environment as well. So for some companies, we are already connected to the centralized database with the social security numbers in the Netherlands. And so we will be allowed, I think, before the end of the year to use that also for citizens. So then we can onboard citizens on a level substantial and high. And I think that's needed, especially in the health sector in the Netherlands. We need to have the trust on a higher level there, because DigiD is too low.
Yeah, trust has to grow there also to the levels that we have been talking about today more. Marcel, thank you very much for joining us from abroad. I hope to be collaborating with you in the future on these interesting topics.